For most MMA fighters, getting signed by the UFC is a dream that never comes true, let alone becoming one of the most recognized names in the sport. But Kamaru Usman is not like most fighters.
Kamaru, the Nigerian nightmare!
Born in Nigeria in 1987, Kamaru was the middle child in his family and had the kind of childhood that would make a great Oscar-winning drama about survival and poverty. His mother was a teacher, and his father, Muhammad Nasiru, was a major in the army. Hence, he was a man of a strict regime.
My dad was a military dad. He was a major in the army in Nigeria. And my dad was he's just so hard. My dad never told me he loved me until I remember being an adult. My dad was the type of dad to where, he was working all day. We cleaned the house, vacuumed everything, everything's nice. My dad walk in the house, he see a spot.
Not only were both of his parents too busy to pay him much attention, but as a child, Kamaru went years without seeing his father, who eventually moved to the United States with the goal of moving his family over there.
At one particular point, my father was already here, working, trying to eventually bring us all over.
Kamaru spent a great deal of time with his grandmother, but instead of watching cartoons or taking walks in a park, they would walk miles to get clean water from a nearby village.
I lived with my grandmother for a year. I remember having to walk miles in the village to get water and bring it back.
Keep in mind that those miles that he walked each day to fetch clean water, he walked under the scorching sun. And he was just a 5-year-old child. As harsh as his upbringing was, in retrospect, it's pretty obvious that learning to endure discomfort and appreciate sacrifice have set the stage for Kamaru's future success in life. In 1995, his father, now working as a pharmacist, successfully brought the whole family over to the United States, and the Usmans began living the American dream in Dallas, Texas.
My dad saw a better life, and he was able to act on that and elevate us and immigrate us to the America.
Kamaru didn't have to worry about clean water now, but moving to a foreign country comes with its own set of challenges. For example, surviving his teenage years in Bowie High School, being the odd one out, the outcast, the immigrant with the weird accent.
Kids are cruel. You want to fit in. Kids laugh at you for speaking differently.
To fit in, he also tried to get into the school's football team with poor results.
It was challenging as a kid because there are many times where you cry about certain things because you don't understand them. Experience those things, just it makes you strong to where you can deal with way much more in the future.
In hindsight, his childhood struggles and difficult teenage years turned out to be a blessing in disguise, as they pushed Kamaru to look for an outlet that would help him express his pent-up anger and frustration. And that outlet turned out to be wrestling. Looking at him now, you would never guess that, but Kamaru wasn't a particularly skilled or talented wrestler.
But for some reason, I kept coming. I kept showing up, and I kept going, and I kept going, and I kept going. Then one day, I did some type of move that we had been training and drilling, and I did it correctly, and it worked. And then I remember I was walking home that day, and in my mind, all I could think of was, I just applied myself to something, and I learned it. That's one of the best feelings in the world.
Ultimately, he became the best grappler in the state of Texas, with a crazy record of 53-3 as a senior, and placing third at the Texas State Championships. Fun fact, Usman wrestled alongside John Jones at the senior national tournament before leaving for college. In college, Usman wrestled at William Penn University for 1 year, where he was a National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics tournament qualifier in 2007. Facing yet another roadblock, he was unable to attend the tournament due to a snowstorm. On top of that, half of his team and his head coach had left early for the tournament without him, which frustrated Usman and pushed him to leave William Penn. he transferred to the University of Nebraska at Kearney, which had previously tried to recruit him. Here, his career really took off, as he helped the university win their first ever team title in 2008. Usman placed top 3 in the nation all 3 years he attended the University of Nebraska and was a 2-time national finalist. He became the NCAA Division II national champion at 174 pounds in 2010, finishing the season with a 44-1 record and 30 straight wins. His impressive performance in college earned him the nickname the Nigerian Nightmare. Life was good for Kamaru, and not just for him, but for the whole Usman family. His father, Muhammad, as mentioned earlier, had originally moved to the US hoping to improve his family life. He initially studied to become a pharmacist, and once that was accomplished, he even founded 2 ambulance companies, Royal Ambulance in 2003 and First Choice EMS in 2005. He was a successful man, and his ambulance companies ran pretty smoothly, up until the early hours of a summer day in 2009. When a SWAT team would raid their home, and federal agents would take Muhammad into custody, charging him with multiple counts of healthcare fraud, claiming that one of the ambulance companies under his ownership knowingly submitted false claims. Keep in mind, in his homeland, Muhammad had very little experience with entrepreneurship, so in his new American life, he hired some people to help him. But those people ran his business to the ground and did some illegal activities. Being the owner of the companies, Usman's father couldn't escape the law. The government presented evidence that the men submitted more than $3.5 million in fraudulent claims to Medicare and Medicaid through Royal Ambulance and First Choice EMS. While his associates were sentenced to 5 years in prison after pleading guilty to fraud, Muhammad pleaded his innocence and gambled on a trial to clear his name. However, a jury found him guilty of healthcare fraud, conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud, aiding and abetting, and money laundering. And so, in 2010, Muhammad was slapped with a 15-year sentence. The judge who handed down the sentence also ordered Usman to pay almost $1.5 million in restitution. We'll go back to that in a moment, but before we continue, do me a favor and hit that like and subscribe button.
Whoa, give me the fucking... Who the fuck hasn't yet subscribed to perhaps one of the best producers of sports documentaries and sports essays? You better like and subscribe to the one, the only Clenched Teeth. Now, let's get back to the video, yeah?
After college, Kamaru began training for the Olympics. Unfortunately, he was sidetracked by injuries and eventually had to abandon his Olympic goal after failing to qualify for the 2012 US Olympic team trials. Luckily, the MMA gods were playing 4D chess. While Kamaru was training for the Olympics, he met former UFC light heavyweight champion Rashad Evans, who recognized his potential and encouraged him to consider a career as an MMA fighter. Interviewed by Muscle and Fitness a few years later, Usman would say, "It was a no-brainer. With guys like Rashad Evans calling me and telling me I should be doing this, it made it an easy decision for me to go into mixed martial arts." Armed with determination, Usman fought David Glover in his MMA debut. The fight took place under the Resurrection Fighting Alliance 5 banner in 2012, where the Nigerian Nightmare secured a second-round TKO win. Though Usman was an amateur breaking into a new scene, he trained under the Black Zillions, Hard Knocks 365, and Sanford MMA camps. And by the end of his first MMA fight, it was pretty obvious that this 24-year-old Nigerian was destined to become one of the biggest names in the sport. After Kamaru's first TKO win against Glover, it was time for his second matchup against Jose Caceres. Jose was a little more seasoned of a fighter, but Kamaru was confident that this would be an easy win. A little too confident, perhaps.
Leading up to the fight, everyone of my teammates, because they knew the guy, they were from the area. They were like, "You're gonna kill this guy," on my Brazilian teammate. "You're gonna kill him, you're gonna do well." I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna kill him, I'm gonna do well. So I started feeling myself a little bit.
During the fight, Usman struggled against Jose's grappling abilities. And by the end of the first round, Caceres successfully defeated Usman via submission using a rear naked chokehold.
As soon as I tapped, I felt so worthless. I was like, wow. Not only did I just give up, I gave up on myself, I gave up on my dream, I gave up on everything. I was like, I will never, ever feel this feeling again.
He would go on to develop the weaker areas of his game, such as boxing. Although he isn't necessarily recognized as a great boxer, he has one of the best right hands in MMA. And when he mixes in his takedowns, his striking becomes all the more dangerous. But we'll talk more about his style in just a second. After winning his next 4 matches via TKO, it was announced that Usman was one of the fighters selected to be on the Ultimate Fighter 21.
I think he has all the tools that are necessary, and I think he's a great leader.
Gentlemen, welcome to the Ultimate Fighter.
For the first time ever, the UFC reality series featured a format pitting 2 of the sport's top gyms, American Top Team and the Black Zillions, against one another.
We'll celebrate when we win! Not today, when this is over!
In what was a heated rivalry between both Florida-based gyms, Usman dismantled each of his opponents on his way to capturing the coveted 6-figure contract for his team, the Black Zillions. After picking up wins over Michael Graves and Steve Carl, he was selected to represent his team in the finale against knockout artist Haider Hassan.
Haider Hassan's already knocked out guys that they have at 170 on their team. He's got some real heavy hands.
While Hassan stung Usman early in the second round, the Nigerian Nightmare responded by taking the action to the canvas.
Got hurt by that uppercut.
Once the fight was back in his realm, Usman worked toward an arm triangle choke that ultimately secured his victory,
Kamaru Usman comes up.
earning him a UFC contract, a Performance of the Night award, and putting a definitive stamp on Season 21 of The Ultimate Fighter.
Well, this night belongs to you and the Black Zillions.
Only a few months later, in his first fight under a UFC contract, he would face a young Leon Edwards. Interestingly, during this match, Usman was caught in a triangle choke, similar to the one that determined his loss to Caceres back in 2013. However, this time, he calmly defended it by maintaining good posture, and after grinding Edwards out against the cage, he earned a unanimous decision victory.
Kamaru, the Nigerian Nightmare, Usman.
We should also point out that the fact that Usman's first career loss was by a rear naked choke all the way back in 2013 proved that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu might have been his weakness at the time. However, since then, he has achieved a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This speaks volumes about his determination to better himself and improve from fight to fight. Most of his best work, however, usually takes place on the ground. This is why, for the majority of his early UFC career, Usman was seen by his critics as a one-dimensional wrestler. And so, at UFC Fight Night 116 in 2017, looking to make a statement after 4 dominant decision victories, the Nigerian Nightmare delivered his first knockout when he put Sergio Moraes to sleep in the first round. Have you ever been punched so hard that you do a somersault? In 2018, Usman would headline his first UFC event against Demian Maia in the main event of UFC Fight Night 129. In a relatively uneventful fight, Maia started the first round as the aggressor, spending much of the round working for a takedown, as Usman fended off his attempts.
The stoppage was right when he started throwing.
But as the match progressed, Usman's combination of powerful overhands, cardio, and takedown defense was enough to earn him the decision. It was a pretty boring fight. Usman and Maia packed about a half round of action into the 5 rounds, but it was an effective win for the Nigerian Nightmare. Despite riding an 8-fight win streak in the UFC, Usman would struggle to have a top contender sign on the dotted line to fight him. That is, until Rafael dos Anjos accepted the challenge at the Ultimate Fighter 28 finale at the Palms Casino Resort in Las Vegas in 2018. If the first 3 rounds were close, the last 2 ensured that Usman would be leaving Las Vegas with a decision win.
Nigerian Nightmare, Kamaru.
The judges agreed, awarding Usman with scores of 50-43, 49-45, and 48-47. He took to the microphone after to declare that he wanted a shot at the welterweight title. And in March 2019, his wish was granted when Usman faced Tyron Woodley at UFC 235 for a shot at the UFC Welterweight Championship. Woodley himself is considered by many to be one of the great welterweight champions in UFC history. He has taken on and beaten some of the hardest hitters in the business, and successfully defended his title not once, not twice, but 3 consecutive times before entering the octagon against the Nigerian Nightmare. That night, in a dominant changing of the guard atop the welterweight division, Usman dismantled Woodley in stunning fashion.
Mark Goddard allowing Usman to work here.
Usman was bigger and taller and had a good game plan. He moved forward constantly. He pressed and held Woodley against the cage, he took him down, he held him down, and seemed to have endless cardio. When Woodley is pressured, he's very good at stopping the takedown. However, during this match, he was not listening to game plans, not throwing any hands whatsoever. It was a very strange Tyron Woodley. Usman kept the pressure up, never giving him a chance to strike, closed the distance, and sat in the clinch, dominating his opponent and controlling his position for the entire fight.
Usman doesn't appear fazed by Woodley's arm around that.
It is quite difficult to fight someone who walks into you, is willing to take a shot or two, blocks your shots, and smothers you throughout. But when you deliberately choose to fight with your back to the cage, you're asking for it. Honestly, I don't know what else to say about that fight, other than I sincerely hope you didn't bet money on him that night.
It just wasn't a good night for me, so like I said before, we know what I'm capable of. I just look to rematch that and run that back, man.
Usman deserves all the credit for that outstanding performance. He showed up with one goal, to become the champion. And he executed his game plan perfectly, becoming the first ever African-born UFC champion.
We come in here and we work, we do what we do.
For a long time, I couldn't get these guys to fight me, and all these guys knew that I was the worst guy in the division to fight if you ever wanted a chance at that title.
Not only did Woodley lose the belt on that night, but his career also went into a downward spiral. He would lose his next fights in the UFC and would be subsequently released. And sadly, he also recently lost his professional boxing debut against Jake Paul. To this day, many believe that Usman single-handedly broke him that night. In December of that same year, Usman would get his first opportunity to headline a pay-per-view card when he took on Colby Covington in the main event of UFC 245.
But I'd like to introduce Colby Covington. Great fighter. Great fighter. Incredible.
Covington was on a 7-in-a-row stretch that included wins over Robbie Lawler and Rafael dos Anjos. He had also been extremely vocal with his thoughts on Usman's title win, adamant that the only reason Usman could call himself the division's best fighter was because Covington was unable to secure a match against the previous champ, Woodley, before Usman did. Leading into the bout, things had been heated. Covington and Usman reportedly got into a scuffle while standing in a hotel buffet line the day after Usman won the title. Since that altercation, tensions had been building, and both fighters had been keen to have a crack at the other. The fight went the full 5 rounds, but earlier on in the fight, Usman landed a sweet shot to Covington's jaw. So sweet, in fact, it broke it. The bout was well regarded, earning Fight of the Night honors, with both fighters going at it up until the moment it was stopped by an official, determining Covington first TKO 4 minutes and 10 seconds into round 5.
You know, going into the beginning of that last round, Colby was winning that round. And then Usman just came on and then caught him and then finished him. I mean, it was an incredible fight.
Covington did not speak with the media after the event because he was transported to a local hospital. Shortly after, he jumped on Twitter and issued a statement, making it known that he wasn't thrilled with referee Mark Goddard's stoppage. I go in there to kill or be killed. You robbed me of that. You robbed the people of a fair fight. You should be ashamed of yourself, fake ref. Usman successfully defended his belt and was invited on Rogan's podcast. For the first time in his life, he publicly opened up about his father's incarceration during the podcast and blamed the American justice system for turning a blind eye towards his father's innocence, simply because he was an immigrant.
The justice system here, man, is so crooked.
He shared how the real culprits were the paramedics who Muhammad had hired to run his ambulance company.
He didn't really do his research well enough on the guys that he hired.
And even after they admitted to the wrongdoing, Muhammad Usman was sentenced to prison for 15 years simply because of his ignorance.
Joe Rogan is a media phenomenon. In 2019, his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, was reportedly downloaded 190 million times in a month.
Now, with The Joe Rogan Experience being arguably the most popular podcast on the planet, a lawyer among its listeners decided to reach out and help the Usman family.
This podcast alone, you talking about this, could very well bring someone forward that wants to help you with the appeal.
And so, while Muhammad Usman began fighting against a flawed justice system with the aid of a new lawyer, Kamaru kept fighting inside the octagon with even more determination than before, motivated by a renewed hope for the future of his family. He would face Jorge Masvidal at UFC 251 in July 2020. It really wasn't much of a fight, as Usman controlled Masvidal with his wrestling and clinch work to retain the welterweight title with a unanimous decision victory. He would top that with a TKO win over Gilbert Burns in early 2021.
It feels amazing, and I'm a whole nother savage.
But the biggest triumph for the Usman family would come only in March of 2021, when Muhammad Usman would finally be released from prison after roughly 11 years of wrongful detainment. Muhammad was able to watch his son compete for the first time at UFC 261 in April 2021, when Kamaru was scheduled to face Jorge Masvidal for a second time. Wanting to impress his father, but also looking to prove that his previous victory over Masvidal wasn't a fluke, Kamaru scored the most vicious knockout of 2021, when he starched Masvidal with a right hand, to absolutely knock him out cold at the point of impact. The knockout punch and the hammer fist that followed clinched Usman's win at the 1 minute and 2 second mark of the second round.
That hand is ridiculous! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Usman's right hand is ridiculous! He's done all in with it!
However, for Kamaru, the highlight of the night was having his father watching him from the sides for the first time in his career.
It's such an amazing joy to have my family complete once more. Thank you guys.
Speaking on how he felt in that moment, Muhammad said, "Sitting out there watching my son was the greatest thing. That was actually the best day in my life."
Hey, Marty, is your daddy the jailbird coming on Saturday night? I got to hook up with law enforcement. If you want me to call his parole officer, I'll make sure he can come on Saturday night. You want me to make sure? Scam artist, man, I feel so bad for Miss Usman. Could you please do that? Think about that. She's got a cheating ass son and she's got a scammer ass husband. That must be shitty in that household.
Oh, thank you.
November 2021 would see a rematch between Usman and Covington at UFC 268. Going into the fight, Covington said he had recalibrated his approach and would not fight the same way as he did in their first encounter. And the beginning of the opening round revealed a more cautious fighter, though as the round progressed, Usman's pressure appeared to force Covington into a defensive posture. This was a back-and-forth contest, with Usman snagging the first 2 rounds, Covington nabbing the 4th, and the 3rd and 5th being razor-thin. Ultimately, after 5 grueling rounds, the Nigerian Nightmare earned the decision and retained his title. Speaking on the Full Send podcast, he would eventually disclose that he had broken his right hand 3 weeks prior to the fight.
Really? You fought with a broken hand?
Yeah, I broke it 3 weeks before, and I didn't throw it a day until the fight itself.
This again demonstrates how strong his game is. After beating nearly every single competitor that came his way, on August 20th, 2022, Usman put his welterweight title on the line and had a rematch with Leon Edwards at UFC 278. Going into the bout, Edwards was generally regarded as a solid wrestler, but not nearly on the same level as Usman. When the two clashed nearly 7 years before, Usman recorded 6 takedowns. Edwards has improved as a wrestler since, but so did Usman himself. It's interesting to point out that neither man has lost any bout since that matchup, with both athletes having shown significant improvements in all areas of the sport. Now the question was whether Edwards' improvement would be enough to make him the new welterweight champion. The fight was slow. It took place mostly on the fence. Usman took Edwards against the mesh, and there they stayed. Usman was on his way to a 16th straight UFC win and another successful title defense. However, with just 1 minute left on the clock, and many already writing the obituary on Edwards' title shot, Rocky delivered one of the most iconic moments in UFC history. He feinted forwards, luring Usman's head to the side, landing a clean left high kick to his head. Knocking the champion out before he hit the canvas. Everyone knew from how Edwards' shin connected to Usman's jaw that this was a one-shot kill. With Joe Rogan even describing it as potentially the best kick he's ever seen in the UFC. Usman came around and mouthed, "You've got to be kidding me," when the realization of his fate settled in. This brought an end to an astonishing reign as champion. However, his fighting streak is something to behold. Currently, Usman's professional record stands at a ridiculous 20 wins against 2 losses. We can only watch and see what's next for this gifted fighter who's regarded as the best pound-for-pound fighter of all time.
But I'm feeling good. I'm good spirits. It was almost, it's a fight. A fight's a fight. And it happened.
While a potential fight between Khamzat Chimaev and Kamaru Usman would have been huge, a trilogy fight between Edwards and Usman is now the biggest score to settle in the 170-pound division. Who do you want to see Kamaru fight next? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe.